Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Merritt. I am a speech pathologist and research instructor with SWAAAC. I'm super excited that you all are here for our September webinar. Just a quick note beforehand, we will, a couple slides in, have a quick Zoom poll just to gather some data around the learning objective, so be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, I will go ahead and introduce our speaker today, Dr. Ben Satterfield.
Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. We're going to be talking about mastery of assistive technology and how we might go about measuring that. I have one of my research team with me today, Karen Milchus, and I'd like to give her a chance to just introduce herself as we get kicked off here.
Hi, my name is Karen Milchus. I'm a research engineer at CIDI, the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. I work primarily in the area of workplace accommodations, and I will be kind of checking the chat and fielding some questions and to sort of taking notes today. So thank you, Ben, for letting me join you.
Yeah. We also have a number of other people on our research team. I'll just let you know that we're not alone. We've gathered a rich array of talented people who work in various offices and aspects, colleges within the institute, as we call it, Georgia Tech. Bruce Walker is from the School of Psychology and the College of Interactive Computing. We also have Liz DeStefano, who's the director of the Center for Education Integrating Science, Math, and Computing, or SEISMIC for short. Salima LaForce is with the Center for Advanced Communication Policy. And Patricia Griffith and Matthew Blake work with us at CIDI, the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. And Patricia is our statistician, and Matthew is our lead IT person. These people have made a great contribution to the work that we've done, and I just want to recognize their contributions. So let's go ahead and talk about the learning objectives today. I know you're going to be doing a poll here in a minute where you're going to sort of do a pretest on what you know already. So let's just talk a little bit about what we hope to accomplish today. The first thing is that we'll want to tell you a little bit about how we came up with the ideas that we've come up with, and with this tool that we use to assess where someone is in their journey toward mastery of assistive technology. And we did that through a process known as the Delphi research method. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I think it would be a good objective to have, as you being able to understand or remember one of the unique elements of that research method, because it's pretty unique. Secondly, we'd like you to do some thinking with us about what it is that becoming a power user or an expert in assistive technology, mastering the assistive technology, what are some indicators of that? And maybe what might be some predictors so that you could see that that's coming, or that's the person's on the right trajectory to accomplish it. And then lastly, I'd like to ask you to join us in taking this tool and using it, take it out for a spin, test drive, if you will, and do a little evaluation on yourself. And so what I'd like you to think about now is what's a tool that you use, some assistive technology tool that you're familiar with. Maybe it's one that you feel like you're particularly good at using. So maybe you've mastered it. So assess your level of mastery just off the top of your head at 1 through 4, 4-point scale, where 1 is a novice and 4 would be a power user of that assistive technology. And then later we'll give you a chance to see how you score on the tool that we've created, and then you can give us some feedback on it. Okay? So just to give you a little bit of background, Karen and I work at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, or CIDI, which is one of several research centers that are part of the College of Design at Georgia Tech. We're kind of unique because we do both research and service provision in the same house. And there's not a lot of that happens at Georgia Tech. You're one or the other. So we're kind of unique. We're the result of a merger of two agencies or two research centers in the college. One was AMAC, the Accessible Materials Access Center, and CATIA, or the Center for AT and Environmental Access. And they merged back in 2019 and have been a unit, a self-contained unit on campus ever since. CIDI has kind of become a leader in pushing for, advocating for accessibility locally in Georgia and around the campus. Accessibility for people with disabilities, but to make sure that everybody has access to not just physical spaces, but also to information. And that includes web accessibility and educational materials and the like. So we do a lot of consulting with agencies on accessibility. We do provide Braille services, captioning and described audio. We provide a lot of e-text, and also we have a certified assistive technology team that can work directly with individuals who need assistance and can provide training. So we serve virtually all of the schools in the university system in the state of Georgia, and then we have some other schools around the country that we also support or provide services for. And one of the things that CIDI does, and this will factor into what we're going to say in a minute, we provide alternative, or I should say accessible educational materials to students who are going to college in Georgia. If you have a disability and you need to have your textbook in an alternative format or Braille, or you need captioning services while you're taking a class, listening to a lecture, we're the guys who step up to provide that. So we've also provided, we have a library of software so that if a student comes to a Georgia college and they need accessible materials, they also can get the software for a period of time, to one semester at a time, to allow them to take advantage of the materials that they get in accessible format. So that's CIDI, that's where we come from. And the organization Tools for Life is part of that organization. Part of my work has been for Tools for Life as well as CIDI. CIDI is celebrating its 30th year as Georgia's assistive technology program. Tools for Life serves all ages and all disabilities throughout the state, all Georgians. And our mission is to just reduce the barriers and expand access to assistive technology that can help individuals live, learn, work, and play as independently as they can in their community of choice. So we've also had one other feature, what's called the National Pass It On Center, which is a national technical assistance center for the 56 different Tech Act agencies around the country and throughout the territories, the U.S. territories, to help develop safe and effective reutilization processes to support AT reuse. So we're not just about new and we are about new and exciting things about assistive technology, but we're also in the business of helping take slightly used and refurbished assistive technology and make it available where people need to get access to that. So anyway, that's kind of where we're coming from. I think you are probably aware of the fact that we have a growing research base about assistive technology and its effectiveness, or the outcomes of assistive technology. Going back to the 80s and the 1990s, these studies weren't, shall we say, ironclad. They stood to be done with more robust research methodology, but they all tend to point in the direction of positive impacts from the use of assistive technology in education, particularly in K-12. And the one study that really stands out that is kind of robust is the National Longitudinal Study. This was done between 2000 and 2010, so it covered several years. Over 300,000 students took part in the study. And what we found was pretty pretty amazing. When it comes to using assistive technology, for instance, 99.8% of the students who received assistive technology while they were in high school graduated. And among those who didn't receive any AT, just under 80% graduated. The study also found that about 81% of the students who received assistive technology went on to some kind of a post-secondary institution, whether it was a tech school or community college or a four-year institution. But only about 40% of the people who didn't use assistive technology in school went on to do that. And then to go further, to look at the employment situation, about 80% of the students who received assistive technology had a paying job after high school, but only about 51% of the ones who didn't had a paying job. Well, that was pretty stunning information. And so it's encouraged, I think, and added weight to the research that has been going forward, but it also encourages us, knowing that when kids are exposed to and have a chance to develop a mastery of assistive technology, we should be looking for graduation rates to rise, post-secondary participation to increase, better workplace outcomes, and also some of the other research also points to independent living outcomes being better in terms of kids being able to live on their own and be successful. Okay, so knowing this, we at the CIDI, back in the days when it was called AMAC, we were serving students, college students throughout the state of Georgia. As they would come through their universities, they would come to AMAC, which was what we called CIDI then, to receive the support they needed. They would get their accessible materials from us. They could download software and use it. And we also had a customer support center that would work pretty much around the clock. I mean, if kids needed help in the evenings, we were there. And we were trying to assist them in using the tools and downloading their textbooks that were in special format. But what the support team started to find was that there were some students that were just really hard to help. That we reached out to them, we provided training, just like we did the ones who were successful, but for some reason it just didn't stick, you know. So we started trying to figure out what it was that was going on and how we could be more effective, because these students were, you know, not doing very well in their studies. And what we decided to do was to look at the difference between their preparation, you know, how prepared they were coming out of high school to use the technology that we were providing. That seemed to be one possibility. So we did a little study. We've called it the AMAC study. We looked at several hundred students. We focused on kids with learning disabilities, ADHD, some kids on the high end of the autism spectrum, but kids with what we call high incidence disabilities. And we looked at we asked them to tell us some things about their experiences in high school and tried to map out whether or not they felt like they had mastered their technology when they were in high school. And if they did, we looked at them in one category. And if they didn't, we looked at the students who didn't in a different category. So then we asked them some more questions about what happened when they got to college. And we took grade point average, the difference between grade point average in high school and then in college, as an indicator as to whether they were more successful in college or less so, or, you know, in terms of projecting the success rate that they had in school. So we mapped grade point average from high school to college, and we looked at whether they identified themselves as being somebody who was familiar with assistive technology coming out of high school. And what we found shouldn't surprise us. It really mapped nicely over what we were experiencing in our customer service center, is that kids who master their technology when they're in high school have a better chance of being successful in college. It doesn't cover everything. I mean, you still got to apply yourself, but clearly there was a difference between those students who knew how to use their technology and their performance in the first year of school, and the students who didn't really have a good handle on it and their performance. Okay. I think I've linked or put in here the how to get that particular study if you want to read it. It's available through the Assistive Technology Outcomes and Benefits journal, and that is an open journal, so you don't have to pay anything if you want to download it online. ATOB is the acronym for it. Okay. So we had this study. When we looked at it, we said, wow, this is pretty impressive information. It goes along with all that we've been seeing, the evidence and that sort of thing. But there were a lot of questions that were left unanswered, and we wanted to sort of take a look at what's really going on here. So we thought about what mastery is, becoming an effective user of something. And what does mastery look like as it applies to assistive technology? And can we measure it? Is it something we can track? Now, we know some things. We know what assistive technology is. That's defined for us by federal law. And just so we're all on the same page, assistive technology is anything, any piece of equipment, whether it's purchased off the shelf or it's made as a one-off to be customized for an individual. Anything that's going to improve the functional capabilities of an individual, including aspects like learning, work, home living, and their ability to navigate the community. And so that embraces high-tech, low-tech, mid-tech, whether you have to plug it in or it takes batteries, or whether it's just a laminated piece of paper with some really important stuff on it. It's the technology is defined this way. And we're, for the purposes of this study, we're not shrinking or limiting the definition. So as we talk about this, keep an open mind in terms of what kinds of technology this might apply to. Okay. Now, we took a look at several models to try to figure out some sort of a hypothetical starting point. And we looked at several that you might be familiar with. Patricia Dowden has a continuum of communication independence that has to do with AAC users, that talks about different stages that AAC users go through and how they become effective users. Gerald Craddock, back in 2006, had a study that he published talking about the continuum in education, going from a novice to a power user. And then in the more general category of technology use, Dreyfus and Dreyfus have done several studies, and there's a rich literature going back to the 1980s talking about a 4 or 5 stage model of how one masters mental activities. So we use those as sort of models to help shape what we were going to postulate as the pattern that this followed. What we came up with was a 4-stage progression that we sort of anticipate, or from our experience, we thought users of assistive technology go through to moving from a novice user to the power user through a couple of different stages. And we called them, the second stage was context dependent, because you're becoming more familiar with the technology, but you're using it in specific situations and perhaps with specific individuals helping you. But then you become a transitional user in the third stage, where you're becoming more independent, but you still haven't got it all figured out. You're still trying to make your way with the technology. And then ultimately you become a power user. So we pulled together a team of researchers to work on this. We've got a grant from Georgia Tech to study this. And what we wanted to do was to develop a conceptual framework around which, or through which, we might think about mastery of assistive technology. And we wanted to see if we could develop a tool, some way to measure it, some way to plot progress, or see where you are at any particular moment, and maybe get some ideas about what the next step might be, that sort of thing. Okay, so that was our starting point. The methodology we chose to use was what's known as the Delphi method. I don't know if you know very much about this, but this is really kind of neat. Back in the 1960s, when the world was still very much in a Cold War mentality, and nuclear, shall we say, the threat of nuclear war was kind of real. You know, it was something that people were seriously thinking about, and it was a political reality in the international political arena. The Rand Corporation called on some scientists to try to give them some idea about what would be the likely outcomes of a nuclear war and how would we best plan to recover from it in that eventuality. Kind of a bright, cheerful concept to investigate, huh? But the idea was they developed this methodology in the process, because one of the things they wanted to do is they had a number of different experts they wanted to hear from, and they wanted them to be able to speak their mind, and they wanted to try to clarify what each one of them had to say. But they realized some of these guys have got some rather, well, they're scientists, and so many of them have very determined notions about how the realities of the world, and they were afraid that it would all just get into maybe throwing spitballs at each other by the time if they tried to get them all in the room at the same time. So what they did was they separated them and allowed them to give input, but they did it anonymously. And so they tapped the expertise of all these different scientists, collected the information, and then repackaged it and sent it back out in a series of iterative steps to let the scientists say, oh, okay, that's what the group seems to think. I agree with this point. I disagree with this point. So they could make their observations in detail. And then in the next round, they would be collected again and shared with each of the scientists. And then they could comment again. And the goal was, as time went on in a series of these iterative steps, then the groups would come together and there would be sort of a consensus about the various issues that were involved in that research. So we use that same technique. We felt like that was an important way to really hear from people who had important things to say. And if we were going to get a panel of experts, that needed to include some people with disabilities who had become, or we felt like they had become, power users. So we needed to hear from them. We needed to know what they thought. But we also reached out to a number of people who had helped people become power users, through their work as providers of technology. So we went for 4 rounds. Usually this Delphi method lasts 3 or 4 rounds. We went the full 4 rounds. And each round is going to begin with some opportunity to react to information or to create information. And then the subsequent rounds would react to those reactions that had been collected from the previous round. Does that make sense? So we're putting information, we're collecting information from the group, synthesizing it and putting it back out for their reaction. Okay? I don't know if there are any questions about that, but I'd be happy to answer them before we go on. Okay. And we can always drop back and talk about this some more as we go on. But our panel had 12 members to it. And we're just really were excited about the nature of this team, because we had a number of different disabilities represented. We also had different affiliations. So we had 2 folks with vision impairments, 2 with learning disabilities, 2 with motoric impairments, 1 with a hearing impairment, 1 with a communication disorder, an AAC user. But we also had 7 who were associated with academic institutions, and 8 were practitioners in their own right. And as you can imagine, some of these people were in more than one category. But it was a real rich diversity and breadth of experience. They had done a lot of stuff for themselves in terms of arriving at mastery, and had done a lot to help others achieve mastery. So we just felt like this was a good group, and the insights they gave us definitely met and exceeded our expectations. Okay, so in round one, we used the first steps to get them to brainstorm about what came to their minds. What did they think of when they heard the term or they saw the term, a power user of assistive technology? So, you know, we're asking this question, seeking a framework for thinking about the characteristics that comprise mastery. And we thought, okay, well, let's start by looking at what the power user, the person who achieves mastery, what are the characteristics that they, or what are the features, the factors, the predictors, if you will? What is it that if you see this in an individual who is learning assistive technology, this is a good indicator that they're going to wind up becoming a power user? Or maybe they've arrived. So then what are the indicators of having arrived? So kind of want to invite you to join us today in kind of revisiting that process, and kind of looking at what it takes to become, or what you think of when you hear the term or you see these words, a power user of assistive technology. So what I'd like you to do for just a minute here, and you can write this on a piece of paper and then pick one or two and put them in the chat, or you can just put them in the chat if you want to. But I'd like you to stop and take a minute and think about what it means to be a power user of assistive technology, and just fire away. We want to hear what you think. You'll have some great ideas. Keep them coming. This is good. Okay, that's outstanding. You feel free to keep adding to the list. I just want to mention a couple, just kind of bring them up here, just so that we can kind of get them out in front of us. The ability to teach others how to use their technology, to be being an independent user, operational proficiency, independent, spontaneous, effective and efficient in their use of it, using it quickly and easily, somebody who uses AT consistently and effectively in various contexts throughout their environment, can troubleshoot, intrinsically motivated, competency, can use it over a variety of subjects, can teach themselves to locate unfamiliar components in the device. So advanced knowledge and technique of how AT works, independent use, novel situations, troubleshooting, use it for things that they identify as important to them, to the user, you know, and in ways that work for them. Self-edit, the ability to adjust the technology for their uses, their purposes, independent using in various settings, can use it fluently, sort of an automaticity type of thing, perhaps. Okay, these are excellent ideas, and I appreciate your taking the time with us to kind of think this through, because I think it'll make a lot of sense as we look at what happened as we got this feedback from our panel. The panel gave us a lot of information. I mean, these people really had thought it through, and they spent a lot of time giving us feedback. And we had, I don't know, hundreds of characteristics. Now, many of them were very similar. And they didn't just give us one word or two word phrases. They were long descriptions. So we tried to package that. And what we came up with was the sort of what we called our superset of characteristics that summarize in about 30 characteristics the thinking of our panel on what a power user, what the indicators were, or what the profile of someone who was a power user would be. And here's what they came up with, and I'll just run through it so we can get it out in front of us. Access to support, problem solving, access to training, flexibility, independence. You seeing some familiar ideas here? Ingenuity, creativity, technical knowledge, knowledge of AT options and solutions, the ability to troubleshoot, usage, curiosity, technical skills, motivation, self-awareness, diligence, opportunities to use the AT, self-advocacy, technical experience, proactivity, a connection to the AT community, patience, time to learn and to experiment and to learn, adaptability, access to AT, experience with AT, persistence, practice, connection to other AT developers, and money and resources. So that's the superset that of characteristics that our panel came up with. Let me throw it open, and if you want to unmute your mic and make a comment here, what do you think about this? You're welcome to enter in the chat as well, but give us your feedback. What do you think about this list? Is it similar to what you were thinking? There's some items here that surprise you, or what's your thought? Can we say that at least some of the ideas that you all came up with appear on this list? Are there any ones that appear on this list that surprise you? The reference to networking is interesting. Mm-hmm. Anyone have any thoughts they want to share? Okay. Again, we can curious about the money and resources. Yeah, that was an interesting point. Okay, well, we can come back to this if there are some things that pop out at us. In our next two rounds, what we did was take these characteristics in our superset and we put them back out to the panel, and we asked them to talk about them. What did they think about them? Prioritize them for us. You know, which ones are the most important? Are there some that are just not that important, or some need to be combined, or did some need to be expanded on? So the group gave us comments, gave us some ideas about prioritization, and we were asking them in particular to look at each of those characteristics and tell us which were the most important as indicators of someone having become a power user. And they did a Likert scale, 1 to 5, 1 being not that important, 5 being very important. And then which were the most likely predictors? So if you're working with someone and you're trying to help them learn how to use their assistive technology, what are some things to look for, predictors, that indicate that the person would eventually become a power user? And again, they rated those on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being essential, 1 being not very important. Okay. And we went through a couple of rounds until there was an emerging consensus around a set of about 12 to 15 factors. And here they are. In terms of predictors, and the rank order was opportunity to use AT was number 1, knowledge of AT options was number 2, problem solving number 3, 4 was able to troubleshoot, 5 was motivation, 6 was persistence, 7 was adaptability, 8 was self-advocacy, 9 was time to experience and learn, 10 was access to AT, 11 was flexibility, and there went through a little bit of a morphing of the definition there in terms of flexibility related to high tolerance for error. And then 12 was technical knowledge. So those were the 12 items that the panel felt were predictors of somebody eventually becoming a master of assistive technology. The indicators of someone having arrived were these. Top one was problem solving. Second was adaptability. Third was knowledge of AT options. Fourth was access to AT. Fifth was ability to troubleshoot. 6, opportunity to use AT. 7 was independence. 8, motivation. 9, flexibility in terms of high tolerance for error. 10, technical knowledge. 11, improved effective use. 12, self-advocacy. 13, time to experience and learn. And 14, desire to be independent. So based on what you just thought through and your list that you all came up with, what are your reactions to this list? The predictors and the indicators. Any surprises here on the prioritization? Do you see any patterns?
We have a rather quiet group, Ben.
That's okay. It's been a long day, I'm sure, for all of us. So anyway, this gives you an idea about, we've got the mean rankings there that show you the level of consensus. So everyone thought that these items were pretty highly ranked, pretty significant relative to the order of importance. Okay, got a few thoughts here. Knowledge to AT and time to use AT, problem solving and troubleshooting seem to be at the top of both, yeah. And there is clearly a sense of intrinsic motivation to some of this, yeah. Finding it a little strange that access and opportunities are indicators. Okay. I suppose someone having a lot of access might suggest that they have a better chance of mastering it than someone who didn't get access very often or opportunity to use the AT very often. We all are familiar with the AAC device that's comes to school with the kid and then goes on the shelf until they get ready to get on the bus and go home. Oh, it comes out when the speech pathologist shows up and is helping to work with the student for 20 minutes twice a week, but then it's not, in use all the time. So, oh, I see what you're saying. That's a predictor, right? Okay. All right. I find self-advocacy interesting, as this can be shot down so quickly by society that wants people to be verbal. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. Any other thoughts? A lot of indicators share a common theme. Okay. All right. So what we found in this set of indicators and predictors was that they kind of cluster together around 4, we're calling them constructs, specific categories of approach to mastery of assistive technology. And those 4 are experience with AT, proficiency with AT, knowledge of AT, and a personal identification with AT. So in general, the experience with AT is the construct that it talks about having had time to experiment with their assistive technology and learn how to use their tool. It's going to necessitate sufficient access to their AT and opportunity to use it so that mastery would develop. It involves a series of positive experiences so that you're motivated to continue using it and reinforce the learning and the growth as they experience their device or their software or whatever the tool is. And it's further evidenced by improved effectiveness and their ability to use it with greater independence as time goes on. The proficiency is the construct that we use to describe effective use of the assistive technology, the growth, the experience, and aptitude with AT. The individual begins to apply it to more and more scenarios, engages more fully in the features that come in their AT. But the troubleshooting is part of this. This is knowing your device when it's not working as expected, what to do. But then there's also problem solving, which is identifying the barriers to using your AT in the environment and how to work with it to resolve problems in the environment, work with your AT. And then there's the development of technical skills that come along with application of the AT in different situations. In terms of knowledge of assistive technology, this is involving technical knowledge that develops an awareness of what's going on in your system, of willingness to explore and to investigate things, an ability to expand their knowledge about their AT and to do so more independently as time goes on, the ability to make informed choices about AT, which tool, which feature to use for which task, and the functional knowledge about assistive technology, which just gets developed as they use it more and more. And then the interesting one for us was this list of characteristics that sort of come under personal identification with their assistive technology. It's almost like in order for you to really master it, somebody mentioned something that had to do with automatic, effortless, natural use of it. It's almost got to become an extension of who you are, or your ability to call on it and use it in situations needs to become shaped and developed by characteristics like adaptability and persistence, flexibility, especially tolerance for error. Power users are motivated. They demonstrate a desire to be independent. Their AT is part of that independence. It's a tool to express it for some of them. They have developed the capacity to advocate for their needs. They understand why it's important and when it's important as they come to mastery. And so they're more likely to be able to speak up and say, this is why I need this. And being proactive with AT. They're participants in their personal care and their life decisions, and assistive technology becomes a part of that process. So there's a nurturing of some soft skills that develop particularly with regard to AT use, and this list kind of covers that. So we sort of use that as a framework to develop in round 4 or for round 4 these factors into a format, into an evaluation tool. So we use a matrix format that was populated with sort of a rubric style set of definitions or descriptions of progress from novice all the way to power user. And this describes sort of the stages that one might go through in their journey from novice to power user. So we set it up sort of like a score sheet so that you take these 22 different characteristics and say, all right, for myself or for another person, if I'm evaluating them, where do they stand in these 4 stages? Where do I think they stand right now between novice and power user? And so the panel was asked to take the test evaluate themselves, and then maybe go out and evaluate one or two other persons and give us some feedback. And so that we collected the critique that they gave us and the feedback that information and ideas that they gave us, and we built them into this tool. So here's the tool. It's called the Continuum of AT Mastery, or the CATM. I'd like to invite you to take it out for a test drive and see what you think. So in a minute, I'm going to give you the link so you can go out and do that and then come back when you're finished. But I'd like you to think about some assistive technology tool or device or something that you've used that you feel comfortable with. Or maybe it's a new one and you're not all that easy of feeling comfortable with, but that's okay. Just pick one and then use it to complete the score sheet. When you're through, think about the results, and there's a place at the bottom for you to give us some feedback about whether you think the result is accurate in terms of its assessment of where you stand with that tool. And then there might be some things you observe about the way the questions are asked, or the ease with which you take this test, this assessment, and that we'd love to hear from as you finish up. So let me share with you. Here's the link. It's https://at-mastery.cidi.gatech.edu. So once you get to that website, yes, let's do that. Karen, is that something that you can put in the chat?
I am working on it.
Thank you, ma'am. So once you get there, you'll see a login screen that looks kind of like the one that's on the slide now. What you'll do is you'll click on Please Register Here, and then you'll create a new user registration. You'll create a username and a password and confirm it. Whoops. And then once you've done that, you click Register, and you'll be all set up in the system. So then you want to log in using that new username and password, and click on Add a Survey, and do a self-evaluation, and answer the questions, see what you think, and I'll let you go after it. If there are any questions as you attempt it, don't hesitate to unmute or put a message in the chat, and we can help you out if you have any problems. Okay, so I'm doing an evaluation of myself, or another. In this case, we'll do a self-evaluation, and we'll begin the survey. So there's a date, and then the survey participant. For some reason, I am not. No, the survey participant is myself. That's right. I'm doing a self-evaluation. So what assistive technology am I using? I'll use read and write for my example. And the context, or what it's being used for, I'll be reading in the classroom. It's helpful to establish this because particularly when you're going to use it across multiple evaluators, you need to sort of identify what it is we're doing to do an effective evaluation. So here's the first set, experience with AT. We've got access to AT, opportunity to use AT, positive experience with AT, and time to experiment and learn. And the choices for novice are limited. For context dependent, occasional. Transitional user would be more frequent, and a power user would be always. And we have a little bit of a description. So when we're talking about access to AT, we're talking about usage, training, support for AT that is appropriate for the individual. So I might say, I get that frequently. My opportunities to use it are frequent. Positive experience, and occasionally successful with it. Time to use it. No, I don't have much time to use it, but it's out there for me. I just don't get to use it very much. Okay. So the next set has to do with proficiency with AT. And so we're talking about effective use, troubleshooting, technical skills, and problem solving. And so again, the descriptors are to the right. So effective use is the use of AT to participate and do things that the user wants to do. Well, yeah, that's when I use it, that's what I use it for. Troubleshooting, I'm not that good with troubleshooting this software when I have problems with it. My technical skills, I occasionally demonstrate that I can make it do what I want. Problem solving in the environment, I'll say occasional. Okay. In the next section, knowledge of AT, we're talking about functional AT knowledge, technical AT knowledge, knowledge of options, the ability to expand your knowledge of AT, and making informed choices. And again, the descriptors are next to them. So functional AT knowledge is the individual becomes familiar with personal AT, customized approach to using features, personalizing strategies for use. So I'm doing that some. Technical knowledge, I have some. Knowledge about options, I know more about the options than I know about actually using them. Expanding my knowledge, I think I can do that, but I could stand to do it better. And then making informed choices. Well, I'd like to think I do that a lot, but maybe not. So I'll click some. Okay. And then the last category is the personal connection with AT. So this is self-advocacy, adaptability, flexibility, persistence, independence, motivation, and proactivity. And then what we're seeing here is a description of each one. So my ability to talk about my needs, yeah, I can do that. My adaptability, I can do that, but I'm stubborn sometimes. My flexibility, my ability to tolerate error, I wish I could do better with that. My persistence, I'm pretty persistent, so give me that. I'm independent. It's something I really want to do it by myself, so I'm motivated. Proactivity, that may be a weakness for me. I'm going to say so. Okay. So I've filled out all of the radio buttons for each of these, and I'm ready to submit. So I'm going to click on the submit button. And what I get is the survey has been saved, but now I get a little score sheet. And it gives me some information about the nature of the assessment. Here's the scoring for each of the 4 segments, and then a total score. And my average on a 5-point scale is 2.5. And then I get a little bit of a bar graph to see sort of graphically where I am. So I'm kind of a transitional user, but I can go back to the results, and I can see where I need to go next in terms of what my score was in each one of those. Okay. And then if you get a chance to complete this, we also have at the bottom of the score sheet a chance to give us some feedback on whether the instructions were clear, whether you feel like this was an accurate assessment. Please note any omissions or aspects that were confusing. And how do you think a tool like this might be used? And when you're finished, you can click the submit button, and it'll be part of our, you can have input into our process as well. Any questions or thoughts about that? Have any of you had a chance to complete it on your own?
And more importantly, did you see your own responses, or did you see the responses of someone else who was filling it under the same name? I'm not sure if anything was getting overwritten there.
Well, that's what I was wondering, is what you found when you went out there.
We'll get that fixed. probably
I'm
within the
sorry,
next 24
Dan.
hours.
I tested it just before we came on, and I didn't find any problems. So I'm not really sure what came of that. Okay, is there anything else anybody wants to see or me to or to illustrate from this score sheet? I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the presentation if I could.
Well, it looks as if a few people have had some success with that.
Great.
So yes. We had one question, maybe add myself as a survey participant and add the person. That could be, it might have to do with how you were registering as a user at the beginning.
So this is a kind of a bird's eye view of what that form looks like. So once it's completed, you'll get a sheet that you could print it out as a PDF, or you could leverage it as saved online. Okay, we're going to need to wrap things up here. But if you get a chance, it would be great if you could fill out those feedback questions and give us some ideas about what you thought, because that's basically the rest of our presentation was to try to encourage you to give us some feedback and tell us what you think. So I want to thank you for wading through this with us and taking part in the thought process of developing the idea of what mastery of assistive technology is. Welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation in the future. So please feel free to reach out to us. And what I'm going to do is jump to the end and put our contact information up. So if you want to reach out and continue the conversation, please feel free to do so. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satterfield, and thank you to all of you, our participants. Dr. Satterfield, we really appreciate you for sharing your time and expertise on this really important topic today. I see many comments in the chat about just how interesting and helpful this is, so we really appreciate it. And Dr. Satterfield did graciously allow us to record this presentation today, so we will post this recording on our SWAAAC YouTube channel, and I will send the link to all of our registered participants as soon as it's ready. It'll either be from Brenda or I. And also, everyone, please expect a post-training survey in your email in just a few minutes. This will only take 3 to 5 minutes to complete. And your feedback is really important to us. We do read every comment, and your certificate of attendance will be sent once we receive that survey from you. Lastly, you can find more important information about future professional development opportunities, including more of our monthly webinars at SWAAAC.org. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye, everybody.